Hi, I'm Wei-Chung, and I am an economist by training, but business practitioner by heart.
And I am India Tucker, a designer by trade with a knack for marketing and an entrepreneurial spirit. And this is Crash and Build, the podcast where we talk about crashing old perceptions and building new perspectives in the realms of business, economics, marketing, tech, and more.
Here we introduce you to aha moments that will prompt new ideas. Listen in to stay on pace with our ever-changing world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Crash and Build. I am one of your hosts, India Tucker, and I am here with our other host, Wei-Chung Wang.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in. We have some interesting ideas that we want to explore with you. But the first question, as I always ask, is, hey, India, what are we crashing and what are we building today?
So today we're talking about branding, and what we're crashing is the idea that branding just exists in businesses, and what we're building is really an understanding of how much of a difference that branding can make in different businesses and overall company value.
Right. So, I think there's a misconception thinking, like, people think like branding is just a logo thing, right? I mean, you charge somebody to design a logo and that's it, right? But for like bigger companies, we have seen so much work behind the scene in putting together the vision and the mission, and trying to establish company culture behind the logo that they build. And so branding is really a holistic exercise that generally people without prior training don't understand, like, what value it carries. And so in today's episode, I want to, maybe you have some, other paths that you want to take us on, but I have some specific examples that I want to share with our audience and telling them, what successful branding looks like. And maybe hopefully using these brands, well-known brands, we understand, better how branding could be done and enhance the business value.
Yes, I agree. And before we jump into that, I want to highlight something you said, which is it's the logo thing. And I completely agree. I think when people hear the word brand, they'd only think of the visual standpoint of a brand.
Right.
They think of the McDonald's like golden arches or,
right.
Just
right.
logos, but it goes so much further into how we perceive that company. And really, like when I tell you McDonald's, you get a visual in your mind of what it means to you, what it means to America, what it means to the world. So branding is really what gives a company that kind of essence.
Yeah, and life too, right? I always argue that if I present you with a glass of, darkened water, you wouldn't dare to drink it. But once I put the label of Coca-Cola on it, you know exactly what it is, and you would embrace it, right? But think about like how much money Coca-Cola puts behind their branding and their logo, trying to promote their company culture. A few years back, the polar bear commercials in Super Bowl. I can't even fathom like how much money that they put behind that commercial just to push their branding. It for a period of time, I would constantly check the marketing budget of Coca-Cola, and I stopped doing that. But for those of you that are interested, you could actually check Coca-Cola's annual report and see like how much marketing budget that they put behind promoting the glass of dark liquid, right? And which really is their lifeline. That brand is their lifeline. So they're willing to spend, a lot of money and make a lot of effort to secure it. And you mentioned McDonald's and I mentioned Coca-Cola. There's another interesting example that is Starbucks, and that people don't know about, right? Starbucks, and it's more interesting for Starbucks because Starbucks is very democratized here in the United States. Like, people don't even think Starbucks as a thing, but people just see it as a must-have, like like an essential thing that they must consume on a daily basis. And I'm gonna provide supporting evidence to prove my point in a minute. But what I wanted to really start by letting you understand like how far branding effort could go is to take a look at Starbucks and how it performs outside of the United States. Take China as an example. And the reason why I mentioned China was because the GDP per capita in China, while being the second largest economy in the world, the GDP per capita per person is still a lot lower than the GDP per capita in the United States. As of 2024, I think the GDP per capita in the United States is above $70,000 per year per person. And in China, that number is not even 10,000 US dollars. Yet you go to Beijing, Shanghai, you'll be able to find like not only the larger cities, even the like a tier 2, tier 3 cities, you'll be able to find Starbucks everywhere. But you go there, they charge the equivalent of what they charge here in the United States in China. So how could people with less income be able to afford that? Because do they really think that they're buying a cup of coffee? In here in the United States, they do, but in China, they're buying a cup of elitism because that at least that's how they perceive the brand.
Yeah.
Right? Which provides Starbucks an untold advantage in pushing their idea or the corporate identity forward.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
I want to, so because I promise you, I'm going to prove a point that Starbucks is more than just, a brand and a regular thing that people see it as an essential element here in the United States. How do I prove it? I'll share one interesting stat with you. As of March 31st, 2024, do you know that I was also dumbfounded to learn this. Do you know that the Starbucks app in the United States, like you download the app, like you could actually order ahead, you could actually put money in it. There is a balance that you could carry, you could buy gift card and you could reload, right? The unused balance in the Starbucks app, which they were obligated to disclose in their quarterly financials. Listen, it's $1.87 billion unused balance. Okay, so people are willing to put money like a dollar here, a dollar there. Apparently, it's more than a dollar because in the totality sense, it's $1.87 billion as a Starbucks unused balance, right? And if in today's rate, if you were to put $1.87 billion into your bank account, you get to enjoy an annual interest return of almost $97 million. That's how popular Starbucks is. Okay, so it kind of gives you an idea of, again, if you're converting everything into like monetary value, if you look at just the monetary value on the surface, I think they've done a pretty good job. Wouldn't you argue?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I'm not going to argue that along the journey that they have had their hiccups. Like how many times
Yeah.
have they changed their logos? Every time they change their logo, it almost like they were obligated to tell the public, oh, you know what? This is the reason why we changed our logos. And
Yeah.
Starbucks, their leadership team, particularly the CEO, was never shy away of disclosing, his political belief, right, to the
True.
public.
Yeah, very
Yet,
true.
hey, you know what? They're embracing it. They believe that's part of their corporate identity. They're liberal, right? And I'm not here to judge whether, being liberal is good or bad. I'm not here to judge, but I'm just telling you that's part of
Yeah.
their corporate identity, which was then being incorporated into their logo and how they market their products and services,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, I was just going to chime in. Like I've been to a few different countries and it's true. The Starbucks price is always the same in India, in Taipei,
That's right.
in France, and it is like you are buying into this experience. That's what it looks like, at least to the customers who go there.
Right. Which is, by the way, essentially something different done by McDonald's. Because I
Mm.
remember in 1997, The Economist magazine actually published this article that talked about the Big Mac index. Right? They used the Big Mac prices around the world to maybe provide some sort of like a leading index in evaluating whether the local currency is being undervalued or overvalued. So
Mhm.
you get a sense that McDonald's is implementing kind of like price discrimination somehow, right? In economics
Mhm.
term, that around the globe, based on, the cost of ingredients and based on the operating cost of the local store, they will adjust the price of their products, particularly Big Mac. And they use Big Mac because Big Mac is such a prevalent example. Every McDonald's offers Big Mac. I mean, even in the
Right.
Middle East, they offer a Big Mac without beef in it.
Yeah.
Right. So Big Mac is kind of like a leading index, right?
Mhm.
Uh, but you mentioned Starbucks. They seem to be wanting to maintain that price equivalency across
Yes.
the global stores, which is a very different idea. And if I had an opportunity to interview the leadership team that kind of implemented that strategy, my first question is, I mean, have you foreseen the kind of elitism that you'll be able to promote outside of the United States? Because here in the United States, I mean, it's so democratic. I mean, even the bum in the street would sometimes hold a Starbucks cup,
Starbucks. Yeah.
but the bum in the street in Asia, some countries in Asia, wouldn't be able to afford to even step into the store.
Yeah. True. True. And they're so much nicer, aren't they? Wh-
Yes, right.
It's
So,
it's nicer in international countries.
and I don't know why. Like, if there are like flagship stores that you go to China, it's like you go into like a palace, like
Yeah.
Starbucks shop.
Wow.
So I couldn't help but wonder that they're using this to promote also some sort of like a high-end um,
Mhm.
product, you know,
Yes, I think
which
so.
which essentially provides them with like a dual tracks, right? So in the United States, they're focusing on pushing as many products as possible out,
Hmm.
So there are seasonal products, I mean, in the fall, there's what, pumpkin spice, right? And there are specialty
Hmm.
drinks. But the same logo, same brand, same idea, they were doing it differently outside of the United States, which is
Yes.
again yet another example how there might be opportunities for you to promote your brand differently, but obviously everything stays under the same branding umbrella. You
Yeah.
got to have not just only a logo, but also an idea that you're promoting.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Now, I I don't want to digress too much, but if we're talking about branding, if we're talking about logo, like, you have to understand like the whole point of having a logo, having this, branding exercise is to really promote business value. And we've shared with you some companies that we believe that have done pretty well, that are well-known household brand, right? McDonald's,
Hmm.
Starbucks, and whatnot. But there are also companies that have done pretty poorly,
Yeah.
right?
Many.
And many. Do you have a couple of examples that you want to share?
Okay. I want you to start. You can start.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell something that probably not a lot of people remember and recall. So I just shared the international success that Starbucks has, right? There is also one case that had an international fiasco because they misunderstand the idea of branding, and they always come from the US perspective. Remember Gerber, the baby food?
Oh yeah.
So baby food, Gerber first made its way to Africa a long time ago. And
Hmm.
they thought they never came from the humanistic approach. They never considered like the cultural difference. Okay. So they didn't know nothing about the market. And
Okay.
meanwhile, you have Starbucks. They understand what China needs, what they would need to do to make their endeavor of going into, for particularly China, successful. That might involve, for example, you gotta build like beautiful shops. You gotta
Hmm.
promote this kind of elitism so that people understand, would be more willing to buy into your product, which is different, essentially different from the United States. Gerber did something completely different. They wanted to keep everything the same. So when they first promoted their products into Africa, they didn't realize that due to literacy rate, that there was a cultural norm that people will then judge the product and try to understand what the product includes based on what they see in the brand. So remember what Gerber has on their logo? It's a baby face, remember?
Yeah.
So it was a fiasco because African consumers were like, wait, are you selling baby meat in those glass
Yeah.
bottles? Due
And
to,
also, I want to say,
yeah,
like, do they even do, is baby food, was it already like a popular product in Africa, or was baby food itself new to the market?
back then it was new. Back
Okay,
then it
because
was new.
I know it's like somewhat recent since they've created baby food.
I mean, if we don't come from the countries that are still being developed economically, like all these types of foods that we're trying to, like Western style foods or Western style
Mm,
products that we're trying to introduce to foreign markets are kind of
mm.
bougie, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And for very good reasons why like African consumers will assume, what you see is what's inside due to the low literacy rate. So
Okay.
they judge the products by the logos, by the brands, and again with low literacy rate, with but remember back then we didn't have the proliferation of internet, we didn't have free flow of information. So how do you
Mm,
even communicate your brand idea if
mm,
you don't have all these different channels? Like SEO was not a thing, websites didn't exist. How do you communicate? And obviously,
mm.
I blame the company for not being able to, conduct the market research analysis properly before going into the market. But at the end of the day, it was a fiasco. And so these examples that we're sharing with you tells you how important it is to have the cultural understanding, the level of cultural competency, the humanistic approach in coming out with the vision and mission that could be characterized by not just the logo, but the idea behind the logo, the business value that you wanted to promote with the company. And that actually carries a long way, right? I mean, I've shown you some successful stories and I've shown you a fiasco right now. And there are more like modern days fiascos that I could talk about. But it goes to show you that a lot of times the people, especially those people that develop the products, the engineers, the architects, they might not know, the product developers and product managers, they might not know the true value, true business value logos and branding carry.
Yeah. And on that note, like you asked me, I don't think I understand a lot of fiascos, or there's none that really ring a bell to me, but I do know of a few turnarounds,
Okay,
or kind of like branding glow ups, you might say.
that's awesome. Let's
Um,
hear it.
one of them being something more popular today, or is UGG and Crocs, right?
Okay, all right.
Two
Yeah.
shoe brands. I wish I had the figures. I could pull them up, but I know they have skyrocketed in sales over the
Mhm.
last 1 to 2 years. And it must have been that somebody started wearing them, probably a few celebrities or athletes. I know a lot of athletes are wearing Crocs like in between practices or in between games. But Crocs and Uggs were considered just like, especially Crocs, they were considered just gone,
Right.
kind of out completely because they looked
Mhm.
cheap. I think
Yes.
I think Crocs looked cheap.
Hmm.
Crocs were associated more with children's wear, I believe, as
Hmm.
well. Whereas Uggs were considered more with like Y2K fashion, early 2000s. So
Right.
when that kind of went, I believe UGG also did as well.
Yeah, so I would agree with you, right? So Crocs obviously has been trying really hard to expand their product line, right?
Mm,
Trying to include like all these different kinds of like if you have ever gone into the Crocs store, I first of all, full disclosure, I was amazed last time when I visited a Crocs store to see like how many different kinds that they're pushing out,
yeah,
which some people might think that it's a positive thing that they're trying to branch out, but from my perspective, I think it's very obvious that they were desperate and struggling because they couldn't
really.
find, right? They couldn't find a niche product that, remember when Crocs first came out, like they were so
Yeah,
popular and people were just focusing on that, getting that one iteration, and that seemed to be enough.
yeah,
And I think they missed the golden opportunity to extrapolate and explain or even interpretate their brand image and their brand message with that success.
yeah.
So now they are in kind of like the reactionary mode, trying to see what different variations that they could create that could garner attention again. But to me,
Mm,
that golden opportunity has passed. The window is closed because the consumers,
mm,
like you said, they have moved on, right? They've
yeah,
moved on. And I'm not predicting, I'm not here predicting Croc's demise. I'm not saying that. But I'm just
yeah,
saying that it's no longer at the center of people's conversations,
right,
right?
right.
Especially with fashion. Like if you're operating in an industry with a fashion element in it, well, again, I'm not an expert and I
Mm,
would not dare to try to enter that space because I'm a business professional with economics training. So I don't carry a lot of aesthetic sense, but my understanding of the fashion industry is that it goes very quick, which then
yeah,
provides space for companies like Zara or
mhm,
Shein, right? They cheap fashion, update quick, and casual enough so that people could go through like different products fast enough, right?
yeah.
And then so from that perspective, because of the market reality, how do you reflect that in the branding exercise? What is your mission? And I think Zara in that case has done it pretty well. Like people don't mind Zara's cheaper materials. People don't mind. They resort to Zara for the cheap price, and they understand that the materials might not be the best materials that they use, right? But they're okay because they believe in the branding message that Zara wanted them to believe. That is, fashion is just temporary.
Mm,
When you wear the things out, when the things that we're selling you today are worn out, don't worry, come back in. We're not going to charge you an arm and a leg, but you're going to be able to enjoy and stay trendy, enjoy the new products with a
I
fraction of cost.
I will say with Zara and H&M, I know that
H&M,
they
yep,
have been facing a lot of scrutiny with the fast fashion like claims and fast fashion in general.
right,
And so they have also had to, in recent years, to address these complaints and these issues
right,
to rebrand themselves a little bit too. And what we've seen is, I'm not sure if I think H&M, they have released products which are like more sustainable, which means they like will take the products like recycled material and make it into new products. And Zara has been doing the same
right,
because they can't live with that, even though they are cheap products and people do still, if that's what the market is saying, people still do want cheap options. They have to address this so they don't have a bad brand image.
right. And I totally agree with you. I was actually going to mention the ESG perspective, right? The sustainability mission
Mm-hmm.
that they are adhering to. I think right now the sustainability umbrella is their lifeline, right? They're holding
Yeah,
tight onto it. They're trying to attach their brand with it by
yeah,
promoting, and it's just so convenient that the sustainability materials and by using the sustainability materials, it doesn't hurt the revenue model that they're currently adhering to, which is still maintaining a cheaper price point so that
mm-hmm.
people could be, cycling through their products quicker and creating like, yes, higher churn rate, but also higher returning customers, higher percentage of returning customers. And so that really is the branding message that they're embracing. And that has been slowly but surely ingrained into their corporate identity. They're still adhering to the fast fashion idea. They're still adhering to, not trying to make their products luxury. Sustainability is the new idea that they're embracing. Great, recycling materials. They're trying to appear to the newer generation, right?
Yeah.
Which again goes back to, when you create a logo, it doesn't matter how ugly or beautiful that logo is. It is the story and narrative behind that matters. I wouldn't argue that Coca-Cola has the most innovative logo. It's just their name, right? Right. In that sense, Nike has done a much better job because you have the swoosh, right? And you have then the Just Do It slogan behind it to try to explain what the swoosh represents, right?
Right.
And there are so many other brands. Like immediately when you mention the name of a brand, you would know, oh, you know what are they trying to represent? What are they trying to work on? Like Patagonia is another example, right? The commitment
Yeah, very much.
of them, right? The environmental sustainability has
Yeah,
made
they're a great
Patagonia
example.
exactly great example.
Great example.
And so my idea, again, as a business professional, I'm evaluating all this from a pure business perspective. Like how much business value can you create, and how quickly and effectively that you could communicate your vision behind a brand will determine how successful that brand really is.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm communicating this from a perspective of someone who works in branding, which I just realized. So that's interesting that we have both perspectives.
Right. What's your perspective? Are you always creating brands from purely like aesthetic perspective?
No, like you have to take into you have to take in the whole picture. So
Mhm.
the business model, what are they selling? What is the product or service that they're selling? Who are the consumers that they're trying to reach? What do those consumers value?
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's the most important thing. So like we were just talking about Patagonia. Patagonia sells outdoor clothes and garments and equipment. Obviously, the people who are hiking and people who are, I don't know what else they sell, skiing,
Right.
um,
Outdoorsy stuff.
surfing, outdoorsy stuff. Those are going to be probably the people who care the most about their impact on the environment, which is why Patagonia actually released a campaign. Have you seen? It's called "Don't Buy This Jacket," which they literally tell you. So Patagonia has a component within their company, and at many of their locations, you can bring back, if you buy a Patagonia jacket or pants, and for example, they rip or tear, they will fix it for you.
Right. Right. Right.
So they're trying to communicate that they are a sustainable one and that their products will last a long time, and that they want to help you achieve that sustainability through their brand.
Right. So it's not just the Patagonia letters that matter.
No, no,
There is
no.
actually a larger story behind it.
Yes.
And I guess that's the point that we're trying to get to. That is, what is your story? Like, how do you tell your story through the logo? And logo is just one small part of the bigger branding exercise.
Yes.
And like Johnny Walker, for example, the Keep Walking campaign.
Mm-hmm.
They're telling a larger story. I mean, basically an inspiring story of progress and perseverance that gives the brand a meaningful narrative.
Oh yeah.
Right? How about BMW, the ultimate driving machine? Like not a lot of people understand like what BMW stands for. I might be wrong. Was it Bavaria Motor Works was what it stands for. I don't know. I could be wrong, but don't
I don't know. I should know, but I don't know.
yeah, don't fact check me. But not a lot of people. Again, it goes to show my point. Like not a lot of people know what BMW stands for, but everybody has heard of the ultimate driving machine.
Yeah.
And I think BMW was the first car maker that has done the campaign so right that, while all other car brands focus on passive safety features, all these airbags, our cars are so strong. It passed the safety test with flying colors. BMW said, how about, we let you drive so smooth and so fast that you could actually dodge danger because we're the ultimate driving machine. Nobody could catch you up.
Also, BMW added a cinematic component because
Yes.
they did all the James Bond films.
Yeah.
Like, don't you want to be James Bond? If you're gonna get a car,
Exactly.
don't you want to get the car that James Bond drives? Like I do.
Right? Exactly. Which I think it's a very interesting pivot because the James Bond drive used to be Aston Martin,
Yes, that's true. That's true.
right? But apparently Aston Martin is not popular. No, it's not like uh, because they're the limited production. I know
Yeah.
that because Aston Martin used to be my client uh, back in the days when I was in consulting. And they couldn't ramp up the production to allow more
Mm,
consumers to get in, right? And one thing. Number two, the second thing is they are obviously more expensive,
mm.
right? So it's a very interesting marriage, between the James Bond movies and BMW, and I think it makes more sense because now, people get to see, oh, it's yeah, BMW is still a luxury brand. I want to get a hand on the luxury product, but it's so much more reachable than Aston Martin. And guess what? I get to ride BMW like James Bond,
Yes, you do.
right? And since we talk about car brands, there are so many interesting branding changes that are currently ongoing in the car industry. It's so fascinating.
Yes. Shall we talk about Kia and
Yeah,
Hyundai?
absolutely. Absolutely. And I was actually amazed by, to see what Kia has done. Because Kia's headquarters is actually close to where I live.
Oh yeah. And I know it from firsthand because I used to work at a Kia dealership and
Uh-huh.
I was actually working there during this change, this branding change, which was in 2020, 2021, 2019. I think 2020 was the year that they changed all of the cars to the new logos.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, they decided they wanted to go with a more aesthetic feel to the car. Um, I know that they used a designer who used to work for Audi to design
Hmm.
the newer cars.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So they've kind of created almost like the ultimate combination in the way that they have a cheap car brand. Their cars are still cheaper than Mercedes, BMWs, Audis. They look good.
Hmm.
They are made in Korea, so
Right.
their parts are cheaper. It's going to be cheaper for you to get the car fixed. Um, yeah, yeah, I think they did a really good job. What do you
They
think?
did. They did. I think they absolutely killed it with the branding exercise. Now I'm more willing to lay my eyes on a Kia.
Yes,
And
I
I
didn't
would
even look at Kias before. I
right,
never,
exactly.
and by the way, I bought a Kia for my first car, and I never thought I would buy a Kia. Never thought I would.
Right? Because it's
So
more modern. I think it fits your demographic as well, right? Because
it does, yeah.
they're trying to appeal to they know exactly what their target audience is, and they're working hard to get them in line. And and
Yes.
and meanwhile, you have like sharp contrasts that are happening in the same segment. Again, this is from my personal perspective. I think, for example, Lexus has done a horrible job rebranding their vehicles.
Mm,
It used to be like luxury, right? So people have to remember, like Lexus is really an upgraded Toyota, right?
Yeah.
Toyota has been seen as reliable and quality vehicles, and with Lexus, they were when they introducing that brand to the market, they were trying to create a brand that has this luxurious feel, and they have done well with the L logo, right? They have since gone away with the logo. Now it is just small print letters with Lexus
Really.
in their vehicles. And I think Nissan is following suit. I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, so aesthetic wise, you know, I think they lose touch,
Yeah.
and they are confused and befuddled with who they're trying to sell the cars to, right? So I live in Southern California. Again, this is totally subjective because I don't have empirical evidence to support that. And as an economist, I usually resort to the numbers. But I go to the street and I see high-end vehicles, and those high-end vehicles are no longer Lexus. They no longer include Lexus,
Mm-hmm.
right? The number doesn't suggest that way, at least.
They're not associated with that type of
No,
stature anymore.
exactly. Meanwhile, Kia is making strides, and their SUV, their
Mm-hmm.
not only their SUV, their EV line is doing so great,
Yeah, they've been doing really well. And they have a headquarters near you.
right? They
Yeah.
do, exactly. So and again, it's the whole branding exercise. It's just not just the name, not just the logo. It's the narrative, it's the story behind. And I think it's easy to say, like from our perspective, that how storytelling is important, how putting together narrative is important. But when you are actually the one that has to be, designing everything, the challenge comes. Because what I argue, like, you take the Gerber example, right? The cultural competency was lacking. The humanistic approach was missing because they don't understand the international market. Particularly, they didn't understand the African market. And I think this is true to any brand. If you want to focus on a particular type of target audience, it not only takes one person, who's the designer, or one department, which is the marketing department. You have to have buy-in from the entire company. That narrative has to have a level of buy-in. Like, for example, if you run Gerber and you want to make your way outside of the United States into Africa, you need to let the entire company understand, what is this new market about? Who are we targeting? Do we have enough research to show that, the same marketing message that we have in the United States will be receptive by the people in Africa? And 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 before we even do that, do you have your entire organization behind the mission and vision that you create, either as a founder or as a marketing department? Before we do external marketing, there's gotta be a significant amount of internal marketing that you gotta do. Because without buying, and this is not some sort of like a political game that I'm promoting. This is not like through a vote.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm talking about is transparency. What I'm talking about is, the entire organization behind this one idea that we collectively want to push forward. That initiative endeavor requires the buy-in of the internal organization before you could try to secure a buy-in from your external stakeholders.
So
So in that sense, I really am curious about the branding story behind Lexus.
it is so interesting. It is so interesting. We should try to find that out. Maybe that can be an episode.
Yeah, maybe that should be an episode.
So to sum it up really briefly for our listeners, maybe there are some entrepreneurs out there. What do you need for a good brand? Or what do you need to establish when rebranding as well?
Yeah. So we are living in an age where everybody is being exhausted by messages and information. So information overload, which makes the upcoming brand, you know, their job so much more challenging and difficult. Because back in the days, we could just everybody listens to the radio commercials. Everybody watched TV,
Yeah.
right? Now, even if you go to watch TV, like people watch different things. Some watch Netflix, some watch Prime Video, some watch YouTube TV. So there is no like a universal channel for people to get information from.
Hmm.
Which is why for younger brands, they started using like social media, like TikTok and
Yeah,
YouTube
that
channel
makes
to
sense.
promote their brands. And all these ad companies like YouTube and TikTok, Google, they want your money, so they create all these different matrices trying to convince you that your ad budget is actually at works and they're being spent effectively. So in a world where you can't just win people over on with aesthetic design, in a world where you cannot win people over with just a tagline or interesting tagline, what do you need? You need some quick, digestible contents that could articulate and illustrate what exactly you're doing. And I couldn't help but mention Lexus again. I fail to see, in all the channels that I digest information from, I fail to see, and again, this is very subjective, and I fail to see any attempt for that to happen, for the narrative to be explained to me, to be articulated,
Hmm.
right? So for upcoming brands, like if you're creating a brand, if you're creating a store, obviously you have to have everything ready. But the
The
one thing,
logo, the
yeah,
visuals.
you got everything ready, but do you have a digestible way for people to get that aha moment right away? Oh, I know what you're doing.
An elevator pitch for your brand.
And elevated, exact. I like that. I like that. And and there was another branding success. I think it took place in the summer of 2018 or even 17. I forgot the exact year. Remember White Claw,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So what did White Claw do? I mean, it was the same, like it was a hard seltzer. I mean, it was nothing new. It was not even a new product segment that they were inventing. Overnight, it was a success, right? Overnight.
I mean, I can tell you why people liked it, I think, but it was
Why do people like it?
so coming from the perspective of a girl who was in college at this time, I think I think White Claw really appeared to college girls and just like young, I guess not just girls, but people who wanted something light. They didn't want to drink a beer, but they wanted something with alcohol in it. It looked cute. It was light in terms of it didn't have a lot of calories. Um, they got it was cute in the way that the logo on the logo was nice. The product branding was really nice too. So I think that's why it was such a quick success. But White Claw and White Claw is still popular, I believe. But White Claw was soon replaced by some alternatives such as Truly, which did the same thing but may have tasted better.
Right. So, I mean, it was very clear that they wanted to target the younger audience, right?
Mhm.
But do you remember the narrative? I couldn't, right? So I couldn't remember the narrative. You're absolutely right. I think the logo that they designed was very memorable.
Mhm.
I lay my eyes on it. Obviously I'm just one person, n equals one, but I lay
Mhm.
my eyes on it and I was like, oh, this is interesting. But just to follow up with what you said, I mean, hard seltzer, lighter alcoholic drink was not a new category.
Mm.
It had long, you know, it has been there before White Claw came.
Mm.
So what makes White Claw so different? I think it's what they did with the logo. It's what they did with the younger audience. They were promoting it and they were gearing just towards that particular demographic, and hopefully, and they were preying on this particular demographic will demonstrate some sort of like a network effect to relay the messages out, and they did, right? And
Yeah.
particularly that summer, it was the sales surged so much, right? And hopefully by saying that, I'm pushing for companies to consider and to revalue, the importance of designers. Because kudos to their designers, they did a wonderful job creating a memorable logo, and then obviously that makes the subsequent work um, easier. That is to narrate what the brand represents.
I mean, things have to look good. Can you just think about some of your favorite brands? You just talked about Lexus and Nissan, how much it's bugging you the way
Yes.
they changed their logo just to that. So design is very important, and any visuals that go into making the outward appearance of a company, I think, matter a lot.
But I forgot to mention one thing. I know we're running out of time. You know, did you realize that all we talk about are consumer products,
That's true. That's
right?
true. Maybe we need
And
a whole nother episode.
but
Because we're consumer.
yeah, but we're consumers. But the same principles actually apply to enterprise solutions, enterprise products.
Yeah.
Right? I know exactly what Oracle represents. I know exactly what, for example, Adobe represents.
Yes.
Right? I have
But
their logo in mind.
I will argue, Wei-Chung, like with so many of the startups that are coming out right now, all of them sound the same.
Yeah.
Everybody has resorted to a one to two syllable based company name. It's usually something like with a lot of like vowels in it, or like
Right.
something a little bit trendy. Maybe though, I don't know. Uh, Maybe
You're
they'll
right.
take like an animal and like add into
You're
the
right.
name or something.
You're right.
and
You're
and they're
right.
using bright colors. I'm ready for something new. And I mean that is how tech companies today are introducing how they are tech companies. They want you to recognize they are a tech company in that
Right.
fashion. But I think I'm ready for something new. I mean, people are actually getting the brands mixed up because they're too similar now.
Right. Hey, maybe in the future episodes we could, pull up some popular TikTok
Yes.
stories and see like what's actually trendy, right?
Yeah,
And what are being
exactly.
appreciated by the market. And I'm not just talking about like the consumer products, like you said. I mean, all the tech products, I am too. Being in this place long enough, I'm getting tired with all
Yes.
these new companies that try to change the world, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't sound authentic no more.
No, it doesn't sound authentic.
And if I may be honest with you, I don't want to change the world. I just want to make people feel comfortable, more comfortable than yesterday. Don't change the world. Just make people feel comfortable. Solve one small issue at a time.
That's a good
Right?
way to put it.
Yeah. All right. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And stay tuned. If you enjoy this kind of like conversational type, we have more insight that we would love to share with you. And hopefully you follow along.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Crash and Build is hosted by Wei-Chung Wang and co-hosted and produced by India Tucker. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Crash and Build.